Most people will go through life asleep, not because their eyes are closed, but because their mind is clouded, their soul is quiet, and their purpose forgotten. But if you are ready to see, this will be the most eye-opening 10 minutes of your life. 10 minutes is all it takes to change the course of your life, but not by doing more, by doing less, not by adding more noise, but by becoming silent, not by seeking answers, but by becoming aware. Because awareness is the first step to mastery. And without it, everything else is built on sand. It crumbles the moment life applies pressure. You wake up each day and your body moves, but your mind is already somewhere else, thinking about what needs to be done, what must be fixed, what went wrong yesterday, and what could go wrong today. This is the trap of unconscious living. It is not living at all. It is reacting. A loop of thought, emotion, reaction, thought, emotion, reaction. And in this loop there is no space for clarity. There is no room for truth. To master your life, to truly walk the path of power, peace and purpose, you must first wake up from this automatic behavior. And this waking up begins with awareness. Not the kind of awareness that comes from reading or listening, but the kind that arises when you sit still and look within. When you observe the breath entering and leaving your body. When you feel the weight of your presence in this moment. When you notice how much tension you carry without realizing it. The body holds memory, the body holds truth, long before the mind admits it. But most people are strangers to their own bodies. They live in their heads, caught in thought after thought, never once asking, who is it that is thinking these thoughts? Never once questioning if those thoughts are even true. When you bring awareness to your physical body, to your posture, to your breath, to the way your heart beats, when you are calm versus when you are anxious, something begins to shift. You stop being a machine running on habit and start becoming a witness, a conscious observer of yourself. And when you observe yourself without judgment, without labels, without the need to change or fix, you begin to see clearly. You begin to realize how many of your fears are inherited, how many of your reactions are conditioned, how many of your beliefs are not yours but borrowed. And this realization is not meant to shame you, it is meant to free you, because only when you see the pattern can you begin to step out of it. Mastery is not about control. It is not about force. It is about understanding. And understanding only arises through awareness, through watching closely with patience and humility, not trying to dominate your mind, but learning how it moves, how it shifts, how it pulls you into illusion again and again. The true martial artist is not just someone who can strike with precision, but someone who is fully aware in every breath, in every moment, in every action. Nothing wasted, no movement unconscious. That is why in Shaolin training we begin with the breath, with standing still before we ever move, because the stillness teaches you more than motion ever will. People think awakening is dramatic, like a thunderstorm or a flash of light, but often it is quiet, like snow falling, like leaves drifting slowly to the ground. It is the sudden realization in the middle of an ordinary moment that you are here, that you are breathing, that you are alive, and that you were asleep all this time. And in that moment, something ancient in you reawakens, a wisdom that was buried under layers of identity and noise and distraction. And suddenly you see with new eyes, you see that nothing outside you has ever truly controlled you. Not your job, not your past, not even your pain. What controlled you was your unawareness, your lack of presence. That is why the most powerful man is not the one who dominates others, but the one who has mastered himself. And this mastery begins not with doing, but with seeing. Seeing the ways in which you sabotage yourself, the ways you lie to yourself, the ways you run from silence, or from boredom, or from truth. Seeing the subtle ways your mind pulls you away from now. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You cannot go back. Not truly. Because the truth once seen changes you. It creates a fracture in your illusion, and through that fracture, light enters. Every day you are given 1,000 chances to wake up, to notice, to remember. Even as you walk, even as you eat, even as you listen to another person speak, awareness is always available, but most miss it because they are always looking for something else, for the next, for the better, for the more. But what if you stopped looking? What if you just became still just for a moment and asked, what is really here? What am I running from? What have I been unwilling to feel? This is not philosophy, this is practice. This is not theory, this is truth. And truth does not shout, it whispers, it waits patiently in the background until you are ready to turn around and face it. And when you do, you will not find a monster, you will not find weakness, you will find clarity, simplicity, silence, and in that silence you will find strength. Not the loud kind, not the kind that needs to prove, but the kind that stands like a mountain, unmoved, untouched. So let these 10 minutes be the beginning of that awareness, not by adding more to your life, but by subtracting, by simplifying, by observing. Begin with your breath, begin with your feet on the ground, begin with the sound around you. And if you can master this moment not in thought but in awareness, then you have already taken the first and most important step toward mastering yourself, toward walking the path of discipline, of power, of peace, of true freedom, beyond fear, beyond confusion. The most eye-opening moment of your life is not something that happens to you, it is something you allow. It is something you choose. It is a returning, not a chasing, a remembering, not a seeking. It is when you stop everything and simply become awake to what is here. That is where all mastery begins and where all illusions end. You speak of wanting to grow, of wanting to become powerful, disciplined, wise, but wanting is not enough. Desire is not enough. Even awareness, though it is the beginning, will not carry you the full way, because awareness without action is a seed that is never watered. It carries potential but never bears fruit. It remains dormant, waiting for you to step beyond knowing and into doing. This is where discipline enters, not as punishment, but as a sacred path. Discipline is not about controlling life. It is about aligning with it. It is about stepping into your own rhythm rather than being pulled by every emotion, every impulse, every opinion that crosses your path. It is waking up each morning and choosing to walk your path, even when comfort tempts you to stay still. Even when excuses whisper in your ear that you've done enough, that you'll try again tomorrow. You say you want to be peaceful, but your habits are chaotic. You say you want to be strong, but you avoid difficulty. You say you want truth, but you fill your mind with distraction. This is the conflict of modern living. People speak of transformation, but refuse to build the bridge that leads to it. And that bridge is daily, consistent effort. It is repetition. It is ritual. Not glamorous, not exciting, but powerful beyond words. In the temple, we do not begin with grand teachings. We begin with breath. We begin with silence. We begin with standing still for hours, watching the body, watching the mind, watching how quickly it wants to move, escape, distract. And it is here, in this discomfort, that discipline is born. Because discipline is not something you are born with. It is something you create, moment by moment, breath by breath, choice by choice. When you train the body, you train the mind. And when you train the mind, you train the spirit. They are not separate. What you do in one space affects all others. This is why even a simple act done with complete attention is more valuable than 100 thoughts of greatness that never manifest into action. You do not become strong by thinking about strength. You become strong by showing up again and again, especially when it is hard, especially when no one is watching, especially when it would be easy to quit. The path of mastery is not walked through emotion, it is walked through repetition. Emotions change like the weather. One day you are motivated, the next you are not. If you rely on emotion, you will always be unstable. Your growth will be inconsistent, your peace will be fragile. Discipline is what remains when emotion fades. Discipline is the voice that says, I continue because I said I would. It is a form of devotion, not to outcome, but to the process, to the becoming, to the sharpening of the blade that is your spirit. Every challenge is a stone that sharpens you. Every moment of resistance is an opportunity to rise. This is not something that can be faked or forced. It must be cultivated, slowly, patiently, with humility. There are days when your mind will scream to stop, when your body will ache, when progress feels invisible, and on those days, many will retreat, but the one who endures, who understands that growth is not always visible, that the seed breaks beneath the surface before it rises into light, that is the one who begins to taste real power, because discipline is not found in the easy, it is forged in the fire of the difficult. And this fire is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It reveals who you truly are, not who you say you are, not who you pretend to be, but who you become. When life is hard, when your plans fail, when the way forward is unclear, and in those moments, discipline keeps your feet on the path. It keeps your heart steady, it keeps your mind from collapsing into fear or doubt. A disciplined life is not a life without freedom. It is the only life where true freedom exists. Because when you are disciplined, you are no longer a slave to your desires, to your moods, to your environment. You move with intention, with clarity, with inner strength that does not need to shout, that does not need to prove, that simply is. You begin to carry yourself differently, not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence. Not with control over others, but with mastery over yourself. You become reliable, not just to others, but to yourself. And this is where true self-respect begins. Not in achievement, but in consistency. Not in applause, but in integrity. When a man is disciplined, he no longer chases, he builds. He no longer reacts, he responds. He no longer fears failure because he has faced himself 1,000 times in silence, in stillness, in sweat. And in those moments, he has learned that success is not an event. It is a pattern. It is built in the mundane, in the overlooked, in the early hours and late nights when no one sees but the self. So when you speak of wanting to change, of wanting to elevate, do not look for shortcuts, do not wait for inspiration, do not ask for motivation. Look at your daily rituals. Look at how you rise, how you train, how you eat, how you rest. Look at whether you honor your word to yourself, because this is where power is created, not once, but over and over until it becomes who you are. This is not easy, and it is not meant to be easy. It is meant to be transformative, and transformation requires discomfort. It requires sacrifice. It requires walking away from what is easy and towards what is meaningful. And that journey begins with a single decision, not once, but every day. So now the question is not what you want, but what are you willing to commit to? What will you show up for? Even when it hurts, even when you're tired, even when no one is watching. Because the one who lives with discipline does not need to seek power, he becomes it. You have spent so much of your life chasing things outside of you, chasing approval, chasing status, chasing pleasure, chasing identity, hoping that if you gain enough, if you accomplish enough, if you build enough, something inside will finally feel complete. But what you must understand is that the more you chase, the more you forget the self. The more you run, the more distant you become from the only thing that was ever real. The illusion is convincing. It is loud, it is bright, it pulls your senses outward, and before you realize it, you are caught in a web of expectations, labels, roles, opinions. You forget who you are, and instead you become what others see or what you want them to see. But this image is not real. It shifts constantly. It depends on praise, on validation, on being liked. And because it is not rooted in truth, it is never stable. So you begin to feel the anxiety, the pressure, the exhaustion that comes from trying to hold together something false, something fragile, something you secretly know is not you. And the harder you try to maintain this image, the more disconnected you become from your own heart, from your own silence, from your own essence. And this is why so many people feel lost, not because they lack direction, but because they have become strangers to themselves. To return to the self, you must first detach from the illusion, not through rejection, not through hatred, but through seeing, simply seeing clearly that what you have been chasing cannot fulfill you, that what you have been identifying with cannot define you, that who you truly are has nothing to do with your achievements or failures, with your history or your future, with how others see you or what they say about you. You are not your body, though you must care for it. You are not your thoughts, though you must observe them. You are not your emotions, though you must feel them. You are the awareness behind all of it. You are the still presence that watches without judgment, that listens without resistance, that exists even when everything else fades. This is not a concept to be believed. It is a truth to be experienced, and you will only experience it when you stop running, when you stop distracting, when you sit with yourself, not trying to become something more, not trying to be someone else, but simply being with what is here right now, without reaching, without effort, without masks. And when you do, you may feel uncomfortable because the silence will reveal everything you have hidden. The pain, the doubt, the fear, the loneliness, all the parts of yourself you have ignored. But if you can remain with it, without turning away, you will begin to see that beneath all of it, there is something unshakable. There is a presence, a peace, a purity that has never left you. This is the self, and it cannot be damaged by failure. It cannot be inflated by praise. It is beyond words, beyond thought, beyond form. It is not concerned with the world's definitions. It does not need to be improved or fixed. It only needs to be remembered. The path to remembering is not found in more doing. It is found in less, in stillness, in solitude, in observing, not reacting, not judging, just witnessing. And this witnessing is the most powerful act you can perform, because it begins to dissolve the illusion not by force but by light. When you shine light on what is false, it disappears. Naturally, when you observe the ego, it loses its grip. When you see the stories you tell yourself without attachment, they begin to unravel, and in their place what remains is the clarity of being, the simplicity of presence, the truth of now. And from this place you begin to move differently, not to prove anything, not to impress, but because it flows from your center, from your truth. Your actions become more aligned, more graceful, more honest, not driven by fear, not driven by lack, but guided by inner stillness, by awareness. You realize that most of life's suffering comes not from what happens, but from your identification with what happens. From taking every thought personally, from believing every emotion defines you, from making every failure a reflection of your worth. But when you are rooted in the self, you no longer cling to what comes, and you no longer resist what goes. You become like the sky, untouched by the passing clouds. This detachment is not cold, it is not distant, it is clear, it is compassionate, it sees everything but is bound by nothing. It allows everything but clings to nothing. And from this space, life becomes simpler. Not easier, but clearer, because now you are no longer trying to control the world, you are mastering the self. And in mastering the self, you become immovable. Not in a rigid way, but in a grounded way. You are not shaken by praise or blame, by gain or loss, because your sense of identity is no longer tied to these things. You are not seeking security in the world because you have found security within yourself. This is why all true power begins within. This is why all ancient teachings point inward, not to the stars, not to the mountains, not to others, but inward, because everything outside can be taken away, but what is within cannot be touched unless you forget it, unless you abandon it, unless you chase something less. So if you want peace, stop chasing noise. If you want freedom, stop clinging to identity. If you want truth, stop believing everything you think and begin instead to observe and remember and return. What you are looking for is not in the future. It is not in the next achievement, the next relationship, the next possession. It is already here. It always was. You were simply looking everywhere except where it truly lived. You are not lost, you are just distracted. And the moment you return to yourself, the moment you stop feeding the illusion, you will feel it. A quiet shift, a silent remembering, a sense of home that needs no words. The most powerful journey is not to another country or a higher title or a better version of yourself. It is the journey back to the self. And it begins not with movement but with stillness, not with effort but with surrender, not with seeking but with seeing. Detach from the illusion, return to the self, remember what you are and what you are not. This is the doorway to freedom, to clarity, to mastery, to peace. There is a part of you that knows you are meant for more, not in the sense of external achievement or applause, but in the sense of depth, in the sense of meaning, in the sense that your life is not just a series of tasks to complete or roles to play, but a path to walk with presence, a mission to embody with every breath and every action. And yet, this knowing is often buried beneath the noise, beneath the distractions, beneath the opinions and doubts of others who cannot see what you feel so deeply. You were not born to be ordinary. You were not born to simply exist, survive, repeat. You were born with the seed of something rare, something sacred, but that seed does not grow on its own. It requires courage. It requires sacrifice. It requires the willingness to walk alone at times, to be misunderstood, to face fear and walk anyway, to move forward without needing permission, because true purpose does not wait for the world to agree with you, it waits for you to agree with yourself. There is a power inside you that is not loud, it does not scream for attention, it does not demand to be seen, it simply is. And when you learn to become still, to listen, to move from that power, you stop chasing and you start creating. You stop doubting and you start living from clarity. You stop hesitating and you begin to embody what you came here to do. This purpose is not something someone else can give you. It is not a title, it is not a job, it is not a label. It is the way you live, the energy you bring, the presence you carry. It is not found in the future, it is expressed now, through how you treat others, through how you speak to yourself, through how you rise after falling, through how you commit when things are uncertain, through how you serve, not with pride but with humility. And the reason most people do not find this purpose is not because it is hidden. It is because they are too distracted, too afraid, too conditioned by comfort and approval. They trade their soul for security. They trade their fire for fitting in. They wear masks for so long they forget there was ever a face beneath them. And in doing so they become hollow, successful perhaps on the outside but empty within. You must ask yourself, what are you willing to give up to live in alignment with your truth? What habits, what attachments, what false identities, what illusions are you willing to let burn so that something real can emerge? Because something real cannot emerge while you cling to the fake. Something true cannot rise while you serve the lie. The journey to your purpose is not a straight path. It is not clean or easy. It is filled with moments of darkness, with tests, with silence, with pain, but all of it is necessary. Because pain awakens you, it reveals what is false. It shakes you from sleep. It shows you where you have compromised too much. It forces you to go inward, to reflect, to change, not in bitterness but in awareness, not in anger but in clarity. When you are tested, do not curse the test. Become worthy of it. Rise to meet it with stillness and strength. Understand that the greater the fire, the purer the gold. If you want to embody something rare, you must endure something rare, not as punishment, but as preparation. The more pressure you withstand, the more potential you unlock. Not through force, but through surrender. Not through control, but through trust. And trust is not blind. It is not passive. It is active. It is a choice you make in every moment to stay on your path, even when you are afraid, even when you are tired, even when the results are not clear. Because trust is what moves you from trying to being, from hoping to knowing, from wanting to walking. You begin to realize that your purpose is not always about doing more. Sometimes it is about being more. Aligned, because when you are aligned, everything you do flows from that power, and when you are not aligned, everything you do drains that power. Purpose is not a thing you achieve, it is a state you live in. It is your natural state. Once all the noise is removed, it is your original energy. Before you were told who to be, before you were shaped by fear, before you began to hide behind what you thought was acceptable. It is the real you, unfiltered, unchained, unshaken. And to live from this state is the greatest gift you can give, not just to yourself, but to the world. Because the world does not need more copies, more noise, more shallow success. It needs people who are awake, who are brave, who are free, who live with depth, who speak with clarity, who act with compassion, who stand in truth even when it is difficult. But this path demands everything from you. It demands that you stop waiting, stop blaming, stop pretending. It demands that you wake up to your own strength, that you own your choices, that you hold yourself to a higher standard, not from ego, but from devotion to something greater than comfort, greater than fear, greater than the self. So now the question is not what do you want to do, but who are you willing to become? What are you willing to give your life to? What will you look back on and say, I gave everything to this, not because I had to, but because I chose to, because it mattered, because it was true. Do not waste this life chasing shadows, chasing approval, chasing things that fade. Return to what is real. Return to what calls you in silence. Return to the still voice that has never left you, the one that whispers, not of fame, not of glory, but of meaning, of alignment, of peace. The most eye-opening moments of your life will not come when the world sees you. They will come when you see yourself clearly, when you remember why you are here, when you stop being who the world wants and start becoming who you were born to be. And from that moment forward, everything changes, everything awakens, everything begins. So these 10 minutes are not about information, they are about transfer, about remembering what you forgot, and awakening to what you truly are. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Because now is all you've ever had.